Good morning, folks, and happy Thanksgiving. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, Bill Reimer, your reluctant prophet. I've noticed something disturbing cropping up in discussions online. I suppose that I ought not to be surprised, but given the fact that Charlie Kirk has set such a wonderful example, I was hoping that more people might wish to emulate his Socratic method. I've noticed that the right, people that believed in individual liberty and limited government under the rule of law, economic freedom, they've started to use the same sort of arguments that the left is using. This cannot possibly work to our benefit, which is why I wrote today's blog and vodcast. What happens when the ideologically possessed on both sides of the debate share the same unreasoned tactics? What do both sides of the left versus right discussion share? The use of logical fallacies, particularly the one best known as red herring. Because of this, I've grown heartily sick and tired of attempting to reason with people who obviously do not understand the rules of debate. I'm having many of you attempt to debate with me on my blogs and vodcasts that haven't even watched them. They're not even debating me based on the actual content of what I released. So obviously it's impossible for me to respond to them in kind. Since I expect this of the left, I find it truly concerning that people who claim to believe in individual liberty use their enemies' tactics. Next subtitle: what is a red herring fallacy? A red herring is a diversionary tactic that avoids the key issues, often by avoiding opposing arguments rather than addressing them. It introduces an irrelevant topic into the discussion to distract from the original issue. Example: topic: we need to address government overreach. Red herring response: but what about the economy? People are struggling to find jobs. While the economy is important, it doesn't address the argument about autocratic government. Rather, it shifts the focus. Next subtitle: related fallacies. Depending on how the shift is used, it might also resemble straw man arguments, misrepresenting the original argument to make it easier to attack. Ad hominem, attacking the person rather than dealing with the argument itself. And whataboutism, a subtype of red herring where someone responds to an accusation or difficult question by making a counter accusation or bringing up different issues. This obvious obfuscation really cheeses my buns, since no reasonable response is most often successful in returning the conversation back to the original topic. So let me help you with identifying this fallacy in a specific example or conversation. A judge would throw out any such arguments out of a case if a lawyer was to pull any of these tricks. In a courtroom setting, logical fallacies such as red herring arguments, straw man arguments, or whataboutism would be quickly dismissed by a judge, especially if used by a lawyer to deflect from the actual legal issues at hand. Judges are trained to focus strictly on the relevant facts and applicable law. If a lawyer tries to distract from the core issues by introducing unrelated topics or emotional appeals, it would undermine the credibility of his argument, be objected to by the opposing counsel, and harm their case. In legal terms, this kind of tactic would be seen as irrelevant argumentation or improper rebuttal, and would be challenged under the rules of evidence and procedure. So let us examine how these fallacies show up in legal arguments or debates in a broader context while looking at examples. So how do logical fallacies, especially red herrings and related tactics, appear in legal documents, or legal arguments rather, and how would judges typically respond to them? Real-world example of red herring in court. Case scenario. Imagine a criminal trial where the defendant is accused of embezzling funds from a company. Defense argument, the red herring. My client has donated thousands to charity and volunteers every weekend. Clearly, they're a good person. Why it's a fallacy. This argument introduces irrelevant information, charitable behavior, to distract from the actual charge of embezzlement. While character evidence can sometimes be admissible, it does not address whether the crime occurred. The judge's likely response. The judge would likely sustain an objection to this line of reasoning if it's not relevant to the facts of the case or be admissible under the rules of evidence. The focus must remain on whether the defendant committed the crime. Next subtitle, Other Common Fallacies in Legal Arguments. Straw man, example. The prosecution wants you to believe my client is a monster. Reality. The prosecution may simply be arguing that the defendant committed a specific illegal act. Judge's likely response may allow it briefly as rhetoric. It weakens credibility, however, if it misrepresents the opposing argument. 2. Ad hominem. Example, the witness is just a bitter ex-employee, so nothing they say should be trusted. Fallacy. Attacking the person instead of the substance of their testimony. Judge's response may allow limited character questioning, but not as a substitute for factual rebuttal. Emotion. Appeal to emotion. Example, imagine how devastated the citizens must have felt during otherwise peaceful protests. Fallacy. Trying to sway the jury with emotion rather than with evidence. Judge's response may caution the attorney if it becomes manipulative or prejudicial. Next subtitle, Why Judges Reject These Tactics. Judges are bound by rules of evidence. Example, relevance, hearsay, character evidence. Procedural fairness and precedent and legal standards, particularly in common law. Fallacious reasoning undermines the integrity of the legal process and can lead to objections being sustained, evidence being excluded, jury instructions to disregard certain statements. So, let us examine how these fallacies are handled and explore how to spot them in political or media debates. How to spot logical fallacies in everyday conversations, media, and debates, and how to argue effectively without falling into them. Subtitle, How to Spot Logical Fallacies. Let us review common fallacies and how they show up in everyday examples. Red herring. Clue. The person changes the subject to something unrelated. Example, we shouldn't worry about governmental overspending when there are people who don't have jobs. Spot it. Ask yourself, does this address the original issue directly? Straw man argument. Number 2. Clue. Someone oversimplifies or misrepresents your argument. Example, if you do not want the healthcare system to increase its spending, you don't want people to have ready access to proper healthcare. Ignoring the fact, of course, that wasted funding has failed to increase the efficiency of healthcare expenditures. Spot it. Compare what was said to what was being argued. 3. Ad hominem arguments. Clue. Attacking the person instead of the idea. Example, because you're white, you do not understand minority issues. Spot it. Is the criticism about the ethnic identity of the person or the argument itself? 4. Appeal to emotion. Clue. Use fear, pity, or flattery to persuade. Example, if you don't vote for me, social welfare projects are doomed. Spot it. Is the argument based on facts or feelings? 5. Whataboutism. Clue. Responding to criticism with a different issue. Example, you say our policy is flawed, but what about your party's mistakes? Spot it. Is this a deflection rather than a rebuttal? So, how to argue effectively without fallacies? Here's some strategies to help your arguments stay strong and logical. I hope you listen to this because many of you aren't using these methods in your attempt to argue with the left, especially the crazy woke left. Number 1, stay on topic. Always respond directly to the point being made. If you need to shift topics, explain why shifting the topic is relevant to the discussion. Number 2, steel man instead of straw man. This is the most important. Present the strongest version of your opponent's argument before responding. So you need to understand how your opponents are thinking and create the strongest defense for their position that you can make before you respond with criticism of it. Otherwise, you really don't understand what you're criticizing. This shows respect and strengthens your credibility. 3. Use evidence. Support claims with data, examples, or expert opinions. Avoid relying solely on anecdotes or emotional appeals. I see this every single time somebody tries to debate with me. They try to appeal to emotion or their opinions about something. I don't care about your opinions. I don't even care about my own opinions. I look for facts, something substantive to stand on. 4. Acknowledge complexity. I say this all the time. There are no simplistic answers to multivariate complex problems. I taught root cause problem analysis. Before you know the root cause of a problem, you cannot assign documented corrective action to it. It's impossible. Generally speaking, without getting into deep statistical analysis, by asking why 5 times, you can drive the problems down to their root causes, often many root causes. And then you have to understand the problem before you can correct it. Most of you don't even care to understand the problem we're addressing. You just don't like it. Anybody, any fool can tell you what's wrong, but it takes an expert to address it. Become experts in addressing the root causes of where we are and why we are here. So avoid oversimplifying issues. Recognize nuance and admit when there are multiple sides. Number 5, stay respectful. Focus on ideas, not personalities. Avoid sarcasm or insults. They weaken your position, and that's all I hear. People insulting one another. Why? Let's be frank. Because they're stupid. That's the one thing I really don't have any use for. The worst thing to waste is a human mind. You better hone yours, because we're in the fight of our lifetime over the very nature of and structure of Western liberal democracies. And if you cannot manage to discuss topics with me respectfully, you will have provided me with permission to use all the tools of reasoned debate at my disposal to demonstrate that you are an unreasoned fool. Let me be crystal clear. I am not saying that I am smarter or better informed than any of you. Therefore, I simply cannot imagine how such a situation could be possible. I can't imagine being better informed than you are, because I ain't that smart. What I have shared here is common knowledge available for all to consider. I have not said anything here in this video that isn't the very structure and nature of proper debate, the format for debating. So I beg of you, please do not prove to me that I am either better informed or smarter than you, since if this is true, we are all well, and truly screwed beyond repair. This is better known as FUBAR. God bless you all on this Thanksgiving Day. We have many things to be grateful for. Hone your skills. Become a learned debater, just like the Christian martyr, Charlie Kirk. God bless you.